And the recording has begun. Uh, Thank you, Mr. Calabrese, for being with us today. This is very useful information to be able to talk with a professional in your field, so I just really appreciate it.
Welcome.
So to start us off, what is it that you do in your job, and what's your sort of day-to-day activities?
So my job is to help people make good decisions with their finances. That can be just about anything that's got a dollar sign associated with it. So we do investments, we do insurance, we do some tax management, retirement planning, those kinds of things. My typical day is pretty atypical. There is no single day that you would call as your typical day. It really depends on who you're talking to. We've got clients from a variety of walks of life, but most of my day consists of talking with clients and putting together recommendations for them that would help them achieve whatever goals they may have.
So are you more of a comprehensive planner of like life insurance, taxes, and everything, and less so more just managing portfolios?
We consider ourselves a comprehensive financial planning. I'm a certified financial planner, so we usually take a holistic approach to any sort of investment advice or financial advice for that matter. But the thrust of our business becomes investment management typically.
Okay. And how did you sort of get your interest in investing?
Well, I had been an IT professional back in the dot-com go-go 90s. And after that cratered, I had found myself laid off more than once doing a job that I didn't really enjoy all that much. And I tried to figure out, well, how am I going to make sure that I'm financially solvent myself? And what is something that I might enjoy doing that's got analytical and interpersonal sort of facets to it? And what couldn't be offshored, because that was about the time when everything started moving overseas in terms of IT support. So I kind of looked at the demographics of the country and said, well, this is probably something that I could do, enjoy, and not have offshored.
So generally speaking, today we're talking about investing, of course, and a lot of our people are very much interested in being trading for themselves in a certain way. What's your general advice about the difference between having a professional trade your portfolio and doing it for yourself?
I'll give an analogy. It's sort of like swapping out a toilet at your house. You may be able to do it and you may be very good at doing it, but personally, I'm going to trust my plumber to make sure that the toilet is installed correctly. Investing is the good news, bad news is it's something that you can very easily do for yourself, but there's a reason why the government makes you get licensed in order to do it for somebody else. Meaning that, if you want to perform surgery on yourself, you could, but you probably don't want to do that.
That's interesting that you mentioned that. A lot of courses that we sort of look through, especially the course that we base this off of, they would refer to things like mutual funds as not necessarily beating the market when it comes down to all the fees that have to go with it. So with that considering, some might argue it might be more beneficial for someone to self-teach themselves, and rather than go for something like a mutual fund or to sort of work with robo-advisors rather than go for a professional investor. What are your sort of thoughts on that?
Sure. Well, I don't ever think that getting education is a bad idea. If it's something that you enjoy and something that you find compelling, then by all means pursue it. As far as mutual funds versus robos, most robos advisors that I'm aware of will either use mutual funds or ETFs, which is sort of a diversified kind of mutual fund like investment. But the robo advisor is likely going to be a general sort of advice as opposed to a personalized education or that kind of thing. Have I understood your question correctly?
I think so, yes.
Good.
So at this point, now that we're all just kids, high schoolers, freshmen in college, what sort of are thoughts when it comes to investing? Should we be more interested in more risky assets like cryptocurrency or stocks, or should we be more interested in safer assets like bonds? What's sort of the more balance and inclination for younger people?
Well, this doesn't just apply to younger people, but for anybody, the investment recommendation or choice should mimic the timeframes that you're looking for. So If you're looking to use the funds next year to buy a house, or next year for tuition, or in 6 months to get married or something like that, obviously that would be a shorter time frame, and thus the recommendation would be much more conservative in terms of the investments that you choose. Now, if we're talking about retirement assets that you've got 50, 60 years potentially before you start using them, in that case, obviously you got a longer time horizon, which means that you can afford to be a little bit more aggressive. I'd caution anybody on cryptocurrency. It is a very sexy topic right now, and I'm sure a lot of people out there will tell you how much money they've made. Rarely do you hear about how much money people have lost. It is a very new concept, and I always caution folks, when you're especially younger folks that don't necessarily have a core, a base of investments to fall back on to provide sort of the stability of your household net worth. Cryptocurrency is sort of like the hot thing to talk about right now. It should be, what do I normally say? I normally say to clients, things like crypto are like jet fuel. Jet fuel might be able to take you to the moon. It might also blow you up, right? So you got to be very careful with those kinds of really the hot investments that you read a lot about, or the one that everybody's chasing. Those tend to be flash in the pan types of things, at least historically. And the fundamentals of investing sort of have always prevailed over long periods of time.
When it comes to crypto, there's been quite a bit of discussion amongst us about how exactly the pricing works. We know that for particular commodities, it's an actual physical asset, and you can sort of determine the value of that. And for companies, they actually give out some sort of service, and from there you can sort of determine the value of that. But for cryptocurrency, it's a little bit of confusion among us. How exactly is the value of a cryptocurrency determined?
Well, a caveat, I am not a cryptocurrency expert by any stretch, but I will tell you that I believe a very large percentage, or a large influence on the price of it, is simply psychology. If people believe that it's going to go up, everybody buys it, it goes up. If your history classes, if you remember the Danish tulip craze of, I think it was 16 or 1700, something like that, everyone believed that tulips were going to be more sought after or in demand in the future, and so they drove the price of it up, not based on any utility of it or what have you. So again, I'm not the expert on cryptocurrency, but I would say that I believe a lot of this is, I don't want to use the word hype because that usually turns people off, but I believe a lot of psychology is driving the current markets.
So on that note, what are some of the common mistakes people make when investing, for themselves or when seeking a professional?
Well, those are two different efforts, certainly. But if you're investing for yourself, the number one pitfall that we usually see is people do not match their time frames with the investment. People say, "Oh, I want to buy a house in a year, but I'm going to invest it in crypto and get crazy returns so that I can buy a bigger house," and then find out that it wasn't exactly what it was meant to be. Beyond that, I would say that usually people are not interested in doing boring, right? Boring are the old stodgy, diversified blue chip companies with long track records. Nobody really goes to a cocktail party and says, "Man, I bought a great blue chip mutual fund investment." Usually they'll tell you, "Oh, I bought this, itty bitty company startup out of Silicon Valley, and it's going to be the greatest in the world." If you look at that, there are many more losers than there are winners when you look at those sort of investments. So I would tell young people, boring is definitely where to start. Those sort of, again, those sexy sort of things that you hear about at cocktail parties, those can be sort of satellites around your portfolio, but a core diversified portfolio, in my opinion, cannot be beat. Now, on how do you pick an investment advisor? There's always personal preference, right? I think you should look for somebody with credentials. There's a website that the SEC and FINRA put up. It's called Broker Check, where you can look up the disciplinary history, look at the education credentials. I would say that you should interview your investment professionals, more than one, to make sure that you understand the services that are provided and how they may differ from one company to another. And I always say, look for a referral. If you know somebody who's successful, who you trust, who's got experience with somebody, that can certainly cut through some of the jungle quickly.
What are some of the, I don't want to say so much mistakes, more so complications that occur when it comes to communicating with your financial advisor? So what are the things that you could personally do wrong when communicating with your financial advisor?
The number one issue that causes problems is being frank or being honest, right? So you'll find some people will come and say, look, I'm comfortable with 7% returns or something like that, when really what they're looking for is 20 and 30 and goofy types of things. Or people that are going to tell you, yeah, I'm okay taking risk, and then come to find out they're actually not okay with taking risk. I always say I get the response from clients all the time. I'm okay with taking risk as long as that means I don't lose any money. And you go, well, that's sort of the definition of risk. It's the possibility of loss. So having frank, open conversation is absolutely paramount. I don't think you can have success in any form of business without having honesty as the component of it. So from a client's point of view, sitting on this side of the table, I'd say I need to understand what truly is the motivation, goals, and those kinds of things without I don't know, without anything clouding the truth.
So when it comes to retirement and sort of working on a 401k or an IRA, when should people generally start thinking about that?
Well, I'll answer it this way. I've never had a client say to me, boy, I got started way too early, right? So it's usually, I wish I had started earlier. So, I mean, I'm not a big fan of broad brushes, but I usually say saving early and saving often are usually a successful formula to pursue. Now, if you have other factors that are going to contribute to this, it might be different. If you have credit card debt, maybe you shouldn't be looking at retirement first. If you're looking to buy a house, maybe the retirement accounts aren't the way to go, although there's some caveats there as well. But I would tell you that the sooner you can start, the better you're going to be.
Let's see. Do we have anyone that has something in the chat really quickly? All right. Question. Do you have any financial advice for someone that's looking to be inside investing?
Inside investing?
Uh, I think it's like more along the lines of, do you have any advice for someone that's looking to work in your job specifically?
Sure. The best advice I can give, and I've given this to a bunch of young people, is get experience. And what do I mean by that? The options inside of the investing world, as far as career opportunities, are wildly varied. People always ask me, well, I thought you were a financial advisor. And I say, well, in our office, that means this, whereas maybe in some other offices, it means that. So I would say to younger people, get as many different opportunities to get exposure to folks in different lines of business or different roles. I would not at all worry about compensation now. That is the least important thing. You want to figure out where you want to end up, not where you want to be. And the best way to do that, like I said, is get exposure, see what somebody does all day. Some people often, I should say, some people have interned with me in the past and they thought, wow, I thought it'd be a lot more of X, Y, Z. And I go, okay, well, that's a fair assumption. I'm glad we had the conversation, but not, no two jobs in the financial services industry are the same. So my advice would be, whatever internships you can do, get them. Don't be scared to ask for an internship. Don't be scared to ask for a day for shadow. I think you'd be surprised that there'd be more folks that would be willing to give you a day to shadow or some time to give you some insights into their day-to-day activities in the financial services industry.
You mentioned earlier that you transitioned from sort of more IT and technology based to financial advising. How did you sort of make that transition and how did you educate yourself?
I started over. So what do I mean? I started over. I had to basically restart a career. And what I did is I actually had a gentleman who was my financial advisor. I used him to make investment recommendations for my own portfolios. And I had lunch with him and said, hey, is there any opportunities in your firm where I can, start from the bottom and learn this particular industry from the ground up and whatever I need to do, because it's not something that's as straightforward where they give you a textbook and you say, this is how it's done. That being said, I read, and then I read some more. And then I focused on getting some credentials that go along with it. So at the time I had already had a master's degree in business, but that didn't have it. That was, I think in some regards, a little bit more theoretical than it was practical or functional day to day. So when I said I was reading obviously about the industry regularly and got some periodicals from the people that were sort of mentoring me in the business. And after that, I got the Maryland Life and Health license. And then I worked on getting the Certified Financial Planners designation. And then I got the FINRA's Series 7 and Series 63. And then I learned about taxes, and just, you got to continuously read. And again, it helps to have somebody who's in the business that you might look to for some guidance on direction in the career.
Speaking of reading, what exactly can you reference us to? Any sort of periodicals, any sort of magazines, any sort of books that you would recommend for someone that's interested in going into your business?
Going into my business. Okay. There are some, Finance 101 books, right? And then there are some things that are more specific to my field in general, or in specifics. A lot of the financial 101s, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the Millionaire Next Door, the financial, the Idiot's Guide to Getting Rich. A lot of those are not bad. They have very, very good black and white basics, sort of fundamental building blocks about building wealth, sort of some things that are missing in, I believe, educational curriculum. How to do a budget, things to avoid, why you don't want credit card debt, why you might not want to go out and buy the new car as soon as your old car is paid off. So some of those have some good just personal finance sort of building blocks. You have to be careful because there's a lot of generalities where, I'll have a young person come to me and they'll say, well, I read Dave Ramsey's book. And I said, okay, did Dave Ramsey know this about your particular situation? Because I think you need to handle this way before you handle that. So that being said, so I think that those are good sort of primers to start with in terms of understanding personal finance. For my particular industry, I like Investment News Magazine. I think that's great. I like Advisor News Magazine. I also like, there's a gentleman who's sort of the mouthpiece of the independent financial advisor. His name is Bob Veres. He's, again, sort of the de facto leader, because we're a very fractured industry. We're very, independent, as the name would suggest. But he has some very specifics about being in this industry that I think are information you can't get elsewhere.
Thank you. On that note, do you think it's particularly beneficial to come out of college with a degree in finance or a degree related to that field? Or is there not too much of a difference between someone who has to self-educate like you and someone who got it from a sort of college education?
In terms of performing the role that I perform every day?
In terms of both performing the role that you perform and in terms of job opportunity and competitiveness in the job market.
Sure. Well, as much as I feel like a young person, it's been a long time since I've been out of school. And when I went through college, they didn't have financial planning majors. There are now more and more programs throughout the country that you can get a degree in financial planning. So if you were looking to get in my particular field, specifically to perform this job function, I think that would be a great foundation to start. You still will have a lot of learning to do when you get out of that, but certainly that would be maybe a leg up on some other folks that don't have that curriculum specifically. Beyond that, depending on what you want to do, I am much more client facing than I am computer facing, even though we're on a computer today. Some people are a little bit more analytical, where they're just tracking individual stocks or sector or industry. That might be a little bit more geared towards finance and mathematics and economics and those kinds of things. If you wanted to be a client-facing person, I think any field where you will learn interpersonal relationships, you'll learn, you still have analysis. I think marketing has certainly some value, because you could be the greatest person in the world at what you do, but if nobody can ever find out about you, it doesn't really matter how good you are. So in business, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, I think marketing certainly is a skill that some people poo-poo at times, but I don't think it's necessary. Let's put it this way. When I recruit folks, I don't look for finance specific degrees.
Okay. When it comes to marketing, what are some of the best ways you can put your best foot forward, so to speak?
So I am a self-admitted not a great marketer. I don't enjoy a lot of self-promotion. It's not really my style. I will tell every person, young person that's worked for me, you need to be true to yourself, and you need to be honest with yourself. If you are the kind of person who will go out and fly, flags behind airplanes to promote your business, and you're comfortable with that, fantastic. That That has never been my style. I'm not a three-piece suit guy, as you can tell from the Zoom video here. But in terms of marketing, I always tell the absolute best thing you can do for your business is do a good job. If you do a good job, you provide good service, people are going to talk about it, right? And those people talk about it, and especially in a business where it's very, very personal. This is not buying, you know, a hammer from Home Depot. This is very, very delicate and sensitive information. Certainly having what I like to call my evangelists out there that are talking about their experience now, hopefully how great it's been. They tend to be referral sources and referral sources for life. And to me, that's how I built my business. I can't tell that that's definitively the best way to do it, but certainly it's been successful for us.
Talking about evangelizing and the benefits of having a good consumer base, could you talk a little bit about the benefits of connections and networking when it comes to just business in general, jobs in general, and particularly to the world of finance and financial planning?
So networking sometimes can sound overly complicated, but I will put it this way. If you're in your basement and nobody knows who you are, nobody's ever going to know who you are, meaning prospective clients, other business partners, or what they call circles of influence. Networking is meeting people. And I've done networking in a variety of ways over my career. But quite honestly, when you're networking, I tell people that ask me what's been successful is you're there to meet other people, not to tell everybody about you, right? So sometimes you go to some of these networking events and people bust through the door and let me tell you about me. And you're like, nobody really wants to meet with that person. Nobody wants to have that kind of conversation. To me, it's going out and meeting other people and understanding what their day is like and what they do for a living and what are their pain points and, you know, where are they geographically, what are their passions. Most people in a profession, yeah, they love what they do. Business owners in particular love what they do, but they've got passions outside of that, whether that be philanthropic or something along those lines. Getting to know people themselves will differentiate yourself from the crowd, so to speak. That make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Back to the sort of day-to-day of your job, what's the typical age of a client that comes to you? What's the typical age range?
I don't know that I would say, I would like to say I don't have a typical client. We have clients that are as old as in their 90s, and we have clients that are in my youngest, I think, is in their 10s or in their preteens, right before their 10s, I guess, now that I'm thinking about it. Those are child models. Those have other tax and investment struggles that we need to deal with. But I would say our typical client is between 35 to 65. Those tend to be, I'm into my career now. I figured out what I'm doing. I've settled down. I have a family. I've got other sort of, complications or concerns that we need to consider. Or, hey, I want to retire at some point, and it's not getting any further away. It's getting closer. And in the industry, I think they call that the retirement red zone. So I think we're pretty typical in that regard. Ours might be a little bit younger than most folks, just because I'm a little bit younger in terms of the average advisors demographically. But if you had to look just on a straight numbers point of view, most of our clients are between 35 and 60.
I think that's about all the questions we have. Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you so much for helping us out.
It was helpful.
Yeah, I hope to hear from you later on in life. So
don't be a stranger. You know how to get in touch with me.
Okay. Thank you.
Have a good day. Thank you.